Okay, it's 3:20. Are we ready to get started? All right. Welcome everybody to the OWCA 2021 conference. Welcome to session B. Today we are going to be hearing Jacob Herman, and he's going to be talking to us about consulting on multimodal texts. My name is Yvonne. I am the moderator for this session. So if you have any questions about the conference or technology or anything, please feel free to message me in the chat. Let's see, oh no, okay. There are some participation guidelines for you. Please note that we are recording. That way we can share these videos. And if you cannot see the sign language interpreter, please do send me a chat and I will get that fixed for you. Please remember to keep your audio off until it is Q&A time, unless Jacob tells us otherwise. And anytime at all during the session, please feel free to post comments and questions in the chat. Depending on what Jacob wants to do, we may hold all questions until the end, or he may want us to ask them as we go. He gets to be in charge of that, but all right. And then, so just in case you don't know, down at the bottom, there's the little talk bubble that says chat, and then it'll open up the chat on the right-hand side of the screen for you. That is all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Jacob now.
All right, thank you. I'm going to set up my PowerPoint here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Hi, everyone. In this session, we are going to be talking about consulting on multimodal texts. I'm Dr. Jacob Herman, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Center for Academic and Professional Communication at Rice University. So my pronouns are he, him, his. I'll begin by briefly discussing multimodality and tutoring. Then everyone will have some time to discuss their experiences with multimodal projects within their own institutional contexts. So I'm thinking about the first 20 minutes will probably be me giving some kind of tutoring consulting advice, and then we will do small breakout rooms for about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll come back together to discuss. So this is really meant to be an introduction to multimodal projects. So this is really a starting place for discussion. So I want this to be kind of very interactive. As we go along, you can feel free to drop questions in the chat, and we can either address them at the end or we can take them as they come up. Either way works. Okay, so just to give you a little bit more of a breakdown of the agenda here. We'll begin by briefly defining multimodality and new media, as well as look at some examples. The second thing we're going to be doing is examining 3 main principles for consulting on multimodal texts. So those are narrative, design, and oral presentation skills. And then we'll cover some additional tutoring strategies. And finally, that's when we're going to break out into those small groups to discuss tutoring within our own centers. So before we actually discuss multimodality, I thought it was pertinent to tell you a little bit about my own institutional context. So at Rice University, we have 7,282 students, 3,989 of which are undergrads and 3,293 are graduates. Actually, they've increased undergraduate enrollment, so that number is increasing. The university is heavily STEM focused, and it is often noted for its applied science programs such as structural chemical analysis and nanotechnology. So the Center for Academic and Professional Communication is a multimodal tutoring center based on a traditional writing center model. So as such, the type of projects that we see, they vary greatly. So this includes first-year composition essays, pre-med personal statements, oral presentations, research posters, PowerPoint slides, dissertations, among many other types of projects. So let's start by looking at some working definitions of multimodality and new media. Multimodal projects are compositions that communicate through multiple modes. So those modes include visual design, so colors, fonts, images, linguistic design, so that would be delivery and vocabulary, audio design, so voice, music, and sound effects, gestural, movement and gesture, which in this limited space that we have kind of online is, we'll talk about how this differs a little bit from in-person consultations. Spatial design, so how things are used in space. So I always think of 3D models, how desks are maybe situated in a classroom and how they're organized, or how a presenter uses the space around them. We're most familiar with the written aspect of linguistic design and writing center practice, but the truth is we are all constantly engaging in multiple modes of communication. So the term new media is frequently used when discussing multimodality. So new media are interactive forms of communication technologies that transcend traditional word-based forms of print. Some examples include websites, blogs, social media platforms, and virtual reality. So these are the texts that we frequently think about when we think of multimodality. However, I want to stress that new media only constitutes really a small fraction of multimodal genres. Here are some examples of multimodal projects that might be brought to the Writing Center outside of traditional academic essays. And these are ones that we see frequently within our own context. So these include genres such as research posters. So for conferences or science fairs, we have an undergraduate research symposium, for example, at the end of every spring that a lot of the undergrads participate in. Research or lab reports, oral presentations, so which are frequently combined with a lot of these other genres, PowerPoints, Prezi slides, those sorts of presentations. So let's now look at what I consider to be the three main principles of consulting on multimodal texts. Those are narrative design and oral presentation skills. So tutors don't need to be multimedia or design experts. They simply need to know some basic principles and what questions to ask. So I want to kind of continually stress that you don't need to be an expert in design to be able to comment or provide feedback on these types of projects. The first principle that students need to understand is narrative. All texts, whether written, visual, or oral, contain a narrative. So consultants can help students working on multimodal projects by bringing their attention to the rhetorical situation, which we're all familiar with talking about. Just as with text-based papers, writers must understand what story they are trying to tell. To communicate effectively, the author must consider the audience, who is the intended recipient of the project, the purpose, so what do you want your audience to learn or know, and context, so what is the physical or temporal situation. In other words, what is the context of the presentation and how will it ultimately be delivered? To take this idea further, we might consider any form of research as containing a narrative arc. So this includes the exposition or the issues or the issue the characters or researchers are trying to solve. So the rising action, the obstacles in the way to resolving that complication of the research, and a point of insight or key findings, and the resolution or central conclusion drawn from that research as well. Like with text-based papers, tutors can interrogate the rhetorical situation of multimodal texts. So they can ask questions such as, who is the intended audience for this project? What is their educational background and how familiar will they be with your topic? What information do you want to convey to your audience with this text? How is this piece organized? How do you move from subtopic X to subtopic Y? And in what format do you plan to deliver this presentation? Will you use PowerPoint? Will you use handouts? So some basic design principles can help consultants identify places for improvement in visual presentations, such as PowerPoint slides or research posters. These 4 different design principles here, or CRAP principles, are contrast, making key elements stand out, such as I'm doing here with the bolded blue letter at the beginning of contrast. Repetition, so repeating visual elements to show unity. Again, we can kind of see that with the bolded blue R here. Alignment, so shows that the elements in a line are visually connected, right? We have a left alignment here. And proximity, so placement of related objects close together. So we can see that with the dots here. If we're looking at this example, you could consider those 6 dots that are grouped together on the left as one set of data and the other 3 as another set of data. So another important element to visual design is thinking about the intentional use of color. So I want to pose, what color is easier to see here, red or blue? And if you want to either, I don't know if I can see the text box currently with how my screens are set up, but if you want to put your answer in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself really quickly, what's a little bit easier to visualize here? Yeah, everyone says the blue, right? The blue is easier, and the red surprisingly kind of hurts your eyes, right? Which is a little bit surprising. So being careful with colors of similar intensity. So presenters often think that red's going to draw attention, so they'll use it on a slide with backgrounds that are blue. But blue and red are more similar in intensity or saturation. So actually the red is more difficult to see than the light blue in this case. So also color should be used for emphasis, not for meaningless decoration. Sometimes students get taken away with trying to decorate their slides a little bit too much. It should help the audience follow the presenter's slides. So everything, every design choice that is made should be done so with a specific purpose in mind. Okay, fonts should be made visible to the audience as well. So that means using serif fonts, such as Arial or Calibri for slides and other virtual multimodal texts, and sans serif fonts such as Times New Roman or Courier for print. Serif means the letter has the little lines or tails at the end of the stroke, which were created to help readers read printed documents. So it creates and underlines that so you don't really lose your place at the end of a paragraph, right? And to delineate where the letters actually begin and end. Another important consideration is thinking about font size. So text should be able to be read from a distance if the presentation is in person, 18 to 20 point font for figures, 24 to 30 for slide text, 36 or larger for slide titles. However, keep in mind, especially as we're talking about online writing center consultations, that these types of design elements can change based on whether or not presentations are being displayed virtually. And that's something that I want to kind of interrogate a little bit more in our discussion in the last part. So tutors can get to the heart of the rhetorical questions behind multimodal project design by asking questions such as, is this project intended to be presented in person or virtually? What do you want to emphasize with this image? What is the most important piece of data or information? Why did you choose to group images X and images Y together? And in what ways are they related? And why did you choose this color scheme for your project? So what connotations might these colors convey to your audience? For those multimodal projects that have an oral presentation component, it's important to consider the delivery mode. So is the presentation in person or online? For in-person presentations, tutors should focus on giving feedback on key presentation techniques, such as maintaining eye contact with the audience, the intentional use of gestures for emphasis, and how the student uses the physical classroom space. However, the standard advice needs to be modified for online presentations. So instead of eye contact, This means making sure that the student looks directly into the camera. This is something I'm actually struggling with as I'm doing this presentation, as I'm using my office computer here. I'm not used to looking at where the camera is situated, right? Everybody needs to practice that. While body language is less evident on a Zoom screen, you can still make use of intentional hand gestures. They're kind of limited to this box, though, that we're working within. Students can also consider the technical aspects of presenting, such as the use of a clean, non-distracting Zoom background and using either a headset or microphone for clear audio, especially if there's other kind of distractions maybe in the background. For all presentations, the use of volume, pacing, and clarity are key. So tutors can give advice about tailoring appropriate volume, formality, and pacing of a presentation to the audience. Successful presentations also carefully use inflection and repetition to emphasize important points. So in contrast, the speaker can speed up or de-emphasize less important points or details. However, it's important to avoid uptalk, so sentences or clauses that end like questions and have rising inflection, since this can be perceived as lacking confidence in the eyes of the audience. Now, here's our points here. So one of the most common issues with oral presentations is the overuse of filler words. So, like, you know, so basically. So we use fillers for a variety of reasons: nervousness, uncertainty in the content, or simply because we're forming our next idea. Tutors can help count these filler words and encourage students to become more comfortable with brief dialogue pauses. So being able to pause and kind of use that silence as a tool is really an important presentation technique. And sometimes people don't make use of it. Another common bit of advice is to practice positioning your tongue behind your teeth when you're not speaking as well. So tutors can provide the most help during a consultation by focusing on global issues first, so such as narrative and overarching organization of the presentation or multimodal project. So frequently, students will pack too much content into a presentation, which is quickly lost by its audience. So focusing on concision and clarity can help improve a presentation's message. More is not always better, is what I'm always stressing. This also applies to design elements. Design elements should emphasize or demonstrate key concepts rather than distract or clutter a presentation. So finally, oral presentation techniques can be helped by having an open, honest discussion about presentation anxieties as well. So recording or videotaping a presentation can help students identify both content and oral delivery issues, and providing on-the-spot feedback immediately following a practice presentation, as well as providing students with a short list of written key takeaways can help them leave a consulting session with concrete ideas for improving those projects and presentations. Okay, so I want to give us enough time here to work in groups. So I have a few questions for us to kind of consider. You can certainly move beyond these questions, but I highly encourage you to turn on your video if you're in a space that you're comfortable and able to do that, or you can contribute to the conversation in the small groups by typing in the chat as well. These questions, I have them listed here, but you can also find them on the transcript. So this activity is on there, so you can pull that up to reference it in those small groups. So in what ways do multimodal projects differ in person versus virtually? So what environmental conditions change the way in which the audience perceives the written, visual, and oral modes of communication? How might we consider all writing in an online consulting setting as multimodal text? And I think we can also consider all writing as multimodal text, but it becomes more complicated maybe in this virtual setting. So if we consider all online writing as inherently multimodal, does that change the way in which we approach tutoring practices? A couple other questions that I want us to consider. I want you to be able to talk about your own institutional context as well. What types of presentations do consultants encounter at your centers? What kinds of texts and multimodal have multimodal components maybe that you're not considering or addressing currently, considering graphs and charts in journal articles, class presentations, what types of documents are students bringing into the center? And then finally, what types of professional development are needed for the consultations at your center to provide feedback more effectively on oral and visual presentations? All right, that's a lot to cover. So it's very open-ended. So you can feel free to go in whatever direction your group kind of takes it. And then we'll come back together after 15, 20 minutes or so to kind of discuss some of our key findings.
All right, thanks, Dr. Herman. I have the breakout rooms set up. Actually, give me one moment. I'm gonna make a small adjustment here. Okay, so I'm gonna open all of the breakout rooms and send you all. If you need to have an ASL interpreter in the room with you, please just chat me and I will make sure that happens, okay? All right, Dr. Herman, about 15 minutes, you said?
Yeah, maybe we can go till 3 o'clock and then come back. Would that work? Or
So-
3 o'clock my time, sorry.
Okay, 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Got it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome. All right, Dr. Herman, everybody is back from their room.
All right, wonderful. Welcome back. I hope you had a productive conversation in those rooms. So with the remaining time that we have, I want to open this up to the larger discussion to see what you've all been talking about. I guess we can do this. I'll kind of leave it open and let you all kind of share maybe what your groups talked about. If we want to go through the questions one by one, we can, but I don't think that we necessarily need to. We can kind of take it in whatever direction people want to discuss. So with that, I'll open the floor and let you all kind of speak and we'll go from there. And you can also start by typing stuff in the chat too, if you don't want to unmute yourself. However, I encourage you to turn on your video and say hello if you can.
I'll start. So first, I thank you so much for this workshop, and you've given us lots of great things to think about. And in our chat or group, I was struck by how different each of the institutions were in terms of how much multimodal work we do see. So I shared that one of the reasons I was interested in this workshop was because I feel like even though we offer support with multimodal projects, we always say that's something we do. We just don't see a lot, and wondered if you or other folks had suggestions for how to drum up that kind of business, I guess.
From my perspective anyway, I feel like, so we do a lot of work with research posters, but they're not coming into the center for consultations in a lot of those capacities, right? I feel like we're doing more outreach through workshops and communications in the disciplines projects that we're working on in that case. However, we do see a decent number of PowerPoint presentations. We have a conference room that students can book and present in there. And a lot of that comes from like group projects and communications or relationships we built with professors in biology and in the business school and other places across the university. So I think it is a little bit challenging sometimes to get students to realize that they can bring these types of projects into the center and that, consultants do have valuable feedback to give, on the rhetorical situation of these rather than just, the linguistic mode that we're used to seeing, right? Well, what are some of, I'll kind of pitch that back to you all. Are there ways in which you've recruited students to come or kind of marketed multimodal projects as something that your consultants work on?
So I don't think that this is really something that we've done before. I'm Brandon Ward, by the way. But my thoughts while I was speaking with Alicia and Brandon Ellis was that because we're called a writing center, a lot of times people just don't see video and audio and speeches as something that they can come to us for. I said that at Greensboro, where I was last year with my undergraduate degree, we had a separate center for speech. So I think that one thing that would be good to do, I'm currently a graduate student at Appalachian State, and I'm in the publicity group, and we're making billboards or bulletins rather to put out about the Writing Center. I think one thing that we can do now that I've thought about that aspect is to advertise on that as, you know, we can bring in other things than just written word into these writing centers, and encourage them by putting things up like that, handing out flyers or putting something up online, because I think that's certainly something that a lot of people don't see a writing center to be for.
What's the relationship like between the writing center and the speaking center or the speech center? Is there a relationship there, I guess, or are there ways in which you see kind of collaboration happening across campus?
I really don't know that I can really answer that because I never really went to either. I'm just a writing consultant here, and I've really only been here for about a month. But as far as Greensboro goes, it seemed like the speech center was more for people that were giving an oral presentation, like for public speaking, rather than actually working on the content. They were working more on how to speak, which it seems like for your presentation, that's still a big part of it with fillers. I know in my public speaking classes, we talked about that a lot. So I think writing centers can definitely still have that impact on people.
Good, thank you, Brandon. Other parts of your discussion that have kind of came out of those small groups? I also want to pose that. I want to see what you thought about kind of that larger philosophical question that I have posed as number 2. Do we consider all online consulting settings as multimodal texts in and of themselves, right? And if we consider all online writing as inherently multimodal, does that change the way in which we're approaching our pedagogical practices within this context? And maybe that's opening up some kind of crisis of identity or something. I'm not sure, but.
Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? I think this is a super interesting question because I think it is like a for better and for worse. I think that because there are a lot of people who are afraid of working multimodally, if they think of everything as already multimodal, it makes it a little more familiar. And I think if you already have strategies, for example, for like paragraphing, where you're sort of making that really visual, like how often visually do I leave space for the reader to you know, for the main idea of that paragraph to resonate before I shift thoughts and things and say, okay, that's something you're doing visually. What can we do over here? Like, I think that they talk to each other really well. I think that the danger is an overstatement, but the like hesitation that I have of because I do believe everything's multimodal, but then there's always a but. And that's partially like the things that you're bringing up, like craft design and things like that. I think saying it's all multimodal gives us a starting point for saying you're allowed to talk about this stuff. I think that we do sometimes need to recognize that that there are differences in the different modalities so that people learn the sort of vocabulary of that modality, right? So that they have a starting point, but they also are sort of like, okay, the kinds of things that sort of the smaller local things that I'm looking at that create that bigger rhetorical narrative that you were talking about at the beginning might be different than what they were in prose, and that's okay too, and something that is worth exploring. I don't know if any of that made sense.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm also just thinking about, if we aren't training our tutors to be as explicit in it, I mean, there are ways in which we can use multimodality techniques as tools for consulting on the actual writing itself as well, too, especially in that digital space where we're working on a shared document, right? Where we can actually bold and highlight things, and, our reverse outlining strategies, all of those are very visual elements that we're adding to consulting practice. And if we're training consultants to kind of think that way and think about, multimodality in this context, I think they have a lot more tools at their disposal, right?
I think the thing that you said that's really cool is not just thinking about multimodal products, but the things that you're bringing up are saying, oh, we can bold and highlight these things. We can, like, that the process of online consulting is necessarily multimodal. Like, you're using the audio and the visual and the some of those specific visual tools and things like that to sort of say, even if we're talking together about about an alphabetic text, that we're going to use multimodal practices to discuss any kind of composing that comes in, really.
Thank you. I know we're running towards the clock here a little bit. So I do want to open this up for questions you have, either about multimodal consulting or any of the things that we've kind of talked about. Otherwise, we can also talk a little bit more about professional development practices, and in what ways is your professional development kind of situated to train tutors to work with consulting. I mean, if you have a consulting course, for instance, are we building these types of topics into that course? Or, for my context here, we have what we call consultant development modules, because we can't actually have a course because they have such large time commitments. So we have a series of workshops spread out at random times throughout the semester, and they have to attend so many of them. And those are some of the topics that we have our consultants attend. So we have one actually coming up in the next couple of weeks that's on data storytelling, for instance. And we have a position here within my own center that's the assistant director of visual and oral communication, to kind of support that. I know not everybody has the same types of resources at their disposal, so that's something to consider as well. But yeah, what questions or thoughts do you have as we're wrapping up? No pressure. All right. If there's no other major questions, maybe I'll pitch it back to Yvonne for any kind of closing comments or things that are coming up for our next sessions. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Herman. That was wonderful. All right, so so thank you, Jacob. Thank you to our interpreters, Antonio and Shannon. This was a wonderful session. And so we have two more sessions coming up, C1 and C2. They start at 4:40, so you have time for a bio break, stretch your legs, that kind of thing. And yeah, just as a reminder, if anybody is interested, You can serve on the OWCA Executive Board. There are 7 openings. Applications are due October 31st. So write your application and take it to your writing center to get some feedback. You can serve on a committee. There are 6 different committees to serve on. And if you have any more questions about any of those openings or opportunities, or just, I don't know, want to see more about what the OWCA is doing, please visit our website at onlinewritingcenters.org, and then to volunteer, onlinewritingcenters.org/volunteer. All right, with that, I think that we are good to go. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you're enjoying the conference.